Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to finish up what we need for our sign-in form component, and we're also going to finish styling our authentication page. To begin with, what we want to do is we want to be able to indicate to our users if some kind of error happens. In order to do that, let's console.log the error so that we can see what happens. So let's go back to our application. And here, instead of using an email, let's just see what kinds of errors we can get when we try and sign in with nothing. If we sign in with no required filling fields, we see that we get this required message, which is great because that means that our form input with required is working. So I'm just going to pass an email, and let's say I pass an incorrect password, just an incorrect random password. Here we see that we do get some error. Firebase error, auth wrong password. So this one is a great one that we can use, similar to what we had before. We can say that if error.code is equal to auth wrong password, and what we want to do is we want to alert to the user that there is an incorrect password. So we can say incorrect password for email. Let's save this. Let's go back here. Let's try this again. And there we see it, incorrect password for email. Similarly, what if we have some kind of email that doesn't exist? Here, if we sign in, we see that we get auth user not found. So here what we could do is we could do an else if statement and do a similar error code equals this one. But what instead I want to do is I want to make a switch statement. So what this switch statement allows me to do is it allows me to run code depending on what gets matched inside of error.code. And what I can say is that if the case, in this particular case of error code, is equal to auth-wrong password, like so, then what I wanted to do is I wanted to alert incorrect password for email. And then I want to break. And I'll explain what the break is after. So first, let's just comment this code out. And let's do the same thing for this other auth. So I'm going to make another case for auth user not found. Similarly, alert. In this particular case, no user associated with this email. And we'll break again. And then by default, we'll just console log the error, assuming that we don't know what it is. So in this particular case, what is it that we see inside of our switch statement? So let's break this down. What switch does is switch is the equivalent to almost saying if, and then with this code is equal to this. If it's equal to this, run this. Else, check if it's equal to this. If it is, run this. And otherwise, if none of it matches, if none of these strings match the error code, then by default, just run this code. The break essentially says that once you found a match, don't check the next subsequent cases. You can imagine that if we had like 5 different cases down here and we didn't have this break, what happens is that essentially without these breaks, error code is going to, let's say, match auth.wrong password. Let's say it matches. It's going to run the alert, but then it's going to try and keep matching these cases, even though we know that the error code has already found a match. So with a break, it allows us to prevent that from happening. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that some of you might be wondering, where can we find all of these error codes? Unfortunately, there's no real compiled place or list right now that Firebase for authentication in our current version that showcases what all of these error codes will be and what they are. If you do find it eventually, please send it to me because I've been looking for a long time too, and it's actually a common thing in this community using Firebase that Google has not yet provided this full list of these error codes as well as what they are. But that doesn't stop us from at least addressing these major and currently seen primary error codes that we know are most important for sign-in. So now that we have our alerts, there's actually another thing that I want you to see. If I scroll down here and I look at this button, our Google button, if we come back here, we know that when I hit the Google sign-in, what happens is I should just open our Google pop-up. But let's take a look at what happens. I hit Google sign in. I do indeed see that we have our Google pop-up. But what I also see is that for some reason, our alert fired. No user associated with this email, which we know is our error that we see for an unassociated email. But why is it that when I hit the Google sign in, this form also tried to submit? The reason for this is because by default, buttons are of type submit inside of forms. For us to prevent this from happening, we have to just say that the type of this button is just a button. And now, if we save this and we come back, we clear this, we hit our Google sign in, we see that we didn't end up noticing that we have an error, and also our alert did not fire. So these are pretty much the only last few tweaks that we need to make for this code in order for it to work. So let's also just, for now, keep the response, because after this lesson on authentication, there's a couple other things we want to do with the user object. But let's just tidy up the visuals of our authentication. So let's go to our authentication component. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of this import because I definitely don't need it anymore. But I also want to create some styling so that I can make sure that the authentication page looks how it's supposed to. So let's make a authentication.styles.sass. And looking at the component itself, what I want to do is I want to give this a class name. And I'm going to call it the authentication container. And here, I also don't need this sign-in page anymore. The H1 is done with. And this class name of authentication container is what I want to style. So if inside, I'm just going to do a display flex direction in this particular case, or not flex direction. I'm going to say justify content is space between. I'm also going to set a width, and I'm going to give it 900 pixels because I know each one inside is 380 pixels as we set. And as for the margin, I want a top bottom margin of 30 pixels, but then I want auto margins on the side so that it's centered no matter how big your screen gets. And then finally, I want to make sure that I import in this new style sheet that we've created. So here, let's go back. And there we go. We see that we have our sign-in page. Everything is pretty much working now. And that's it. We finished styling the sign-in page. In the next video, what we're going to do is we are going to learn what to do with this user that we have just signed in. And we have to think about how leveraging this user allows us to perform certain functionality. So we're going to think about the purpose of the user, but we're also going to think about how in React we're going to store and use this user. So join me in the next lesson where we're going to talk about React context. I'll see you in the next video.